as possible, as quickly as possible. But a lot of these people were being told that there was going to be a caucus meeting and they were going to drop all the mandates. And don't know where that came from exactly.
If we can go to page 14, it's February 6th at 2:40 p.m. So you say that you talked to Mayor Fader, and I believe that's the mayor of Fort Macleod, is that
That's
right?
correct.
And Glenn Motz, who's a federal MP, correct?
He's our MP for that, for that riding.
And you say you talked to them about Marco. Marco was not in favor of the legal action and has been working to move toward a legal protest. And when you say working towards a legal protest, did you understand that to be opening one lane each way?
Yes.
And were those efforts successful?
Again, it depends on the time of day and which way the wind was blowing. Sometimes it was successful. My son came down from Edmonton one day, from Calgary rather, came down from Calgary one day, and after he got through the checkpoint in Milk River, he drove into Coutts. He said, "There's no trucks out there." So they were shifting and moving things around. So sometimes the road was open and sometimes it wasn't.
Thank you. If we can go to page 15, February 7th at 10:20. I believe it's at the bottom of the page. So Minister Sawhney says, "I heard the blockade is back up." And you respond, we could go to the next page, I believe. You say, "Yep, tractors just now, highway is blocked." If we keep going. Keep going. So the next day on February 8th, Premier Kenney announced a plan for the gradual easing of pandemic-related health orders. Did that have any impact on the blockade?
Not by then. As I said, they had been told and led to believe that everything was going to come off, and obviously it didn't. And so those people who chose not to understand how government works decided they're going to come to show us. So blocked it again.
We can go to page 19. This is on February 8th. We can go down a little bit. Down a bit more. So you say need access to some land, no construction. And then on page 20, if we can skip down, Minister Sawhney says, "I'm glad we could help you out with the land parcel." Was that in connection with the plot of land for the legal protest site that was established in Milk River?
Yes. Yes, I'd been in the meeting in Milk River with the mayor from Milk River, Reeve from the county of Warner, some representatives from, trying to think who else was in there. Anyway, we had had a meeting and a discussion of where to have an alternate parcel of land. The Milk River people and the county determined that there was Queensland available. And so I happened to have the contact information for the Minister of Transport who could make that happen. And that's what happened here. I gave her the note that they'd be calling her. They did. She made things happen so we could get that parcel.
And did you understand, was there any buy-in from protesters on moving the protest to that site?
No, at that time, there wasn't a great deal of interest in moving from the highway to a plot of land just beside the highway.
And I understand, though, that once the blockade in Coots came to an end, there is a group that moved to that site.
Yes.
Is that correct? And they stayed there for a number of weeks?
For a long time. It looked like a unhoused encampment.
So let's go to page 26, February 14th at 12:42 p.m.
I'm appearing as counsel for Freedom Corp, which represents the protesters that were in the city of Ottawa in January and February. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Long flight. I love driving through Coots.
Yeah.
So, beautiful part of the country. So, if we could please bring up, it's the document that my friends have already referred to from the federal government. It's the Canada document ending 8500 that was just up.
Apologies. Do you have the full doc ID?
Yes, I do. It is pb.nsc.can.0000850. Okay, and could we please scroll to page 32? It's just loading still. There we go. Okay. So this is the document my friend put to you. It's a PowerPoint put together by the RCMP. And there you can see that they are doing what they refer to as community engagement and talking and listening to protesters, supporters, and residents of Coots. Did you witness any of that?
Not personally.
Yeah.
Only online.
Right. But you ended up going and speaking to the protesters yourself too, didn't you?
Yes.
Right. And I understand that when you did that, you ended up doing an interview with CTV and City News about that experience. Do you remember that?
I don't.
Okay. Well, let me ask you if you remember saying this. I just want to put this. This is a statement that's been attributed to you. I wasn't negotiating or anything else. I was just there to find out if they were as bad as some people have said, and they're certainly not. Do you remember saying that?
Sounds like something I would say, yeah.
And you remember saying this about the protesters? They're the same guys that I have for neighbors.
That was part of the uniqueness of this whole demonstration, yeah.
Right. And you also said they're the guy that owns the farm up on the hill, the guy that hauls for local businesses. Do you remember saying that?
Probably did.
Right. And this situation, I understand, polarized your community. There was, the community was essentially divided by half supporting, half against the truckers. Is that fair?
As I said earlier, probably 70-30.
70-30.
On a good day, yeah.
Right. And was that 70-30 in support, or which one was in the 30 and 70?
That would have been supporting the protest.
70%? Or 30% supporting the protest?
No, 70.
70%,
Yeah.
okay. So the majority of your town.
Majority of
First weekend in more detail, but before the weekend began, I take it your expectations would, given the experience of the police service, given the leadership, that your expectations were that, was this going to be a passing event, a short-lived event?
I don't know what my expectations were. My expectations were that Ottawa Police Service, in conjunction with the OPP, with those resources, would be in a position to deal with the situation. There was conflicting information as to the size and the scope of the actual protest, the number of truckers, the number of people, and the length of time that they would be staying.
Okay, and that information, that conflicting information was before the weekend started?
Correct.
Okay. And the fact that it was conflicting information, did that raise any concerns with you that the risk assessment might not be correct, or did you have any misgivings at that point?
I did not. From my perspective, this was a policing matter that was being dealt with by both Commissioner Creek and Chief Slowly.
Okay. Now, what changed after that first weekend?
Well, what changed was that there was not an exit plan for the truckers, that the truckers were well entrenched, and there was certainly a very well communicated refusal to leave. So that first weekend, in my mind, caused me to believe that this protest had morphed into an occupation. And so that's what changed after the first weekend.
And you said that at first you were comforted by the fact that there was a plan that they would not be entrenched downtown. And once they were entrenched downtown, that surprised you?
Yes, yes, it did. My understanding was that there would be a plan to bus these protesters in from the outskirts of Ottawa into the downtown area. So I was questioning the issue of, how did they get downtown?
Okay. And did you get any answers to that question at the time?
I did not.
Okay. And so at that point, that first weekend, the protesters are entrenched downtown. What were the public safety risks in Ottawa at that point, from your perspective?
I was not aware at that point in time that there were any significant public safety risks. And when I say that, I mean in terms of criminal code offenses, in terms of robberies, aggravated assaults, that type of thing. The impact that I saw was primarily significant harm being imposed and committed on the community. So the community's sense of well-being and mental health, that was certainly being impacted by this protest. And but I did not hear of any significant violations of the criminal code in terms.
There are issues going on in Ottawa that, of course, require law enforcement to intervene, but there are no issues with law enforcement at that point from your perspective.
That would be correct.
Okay. Now, on February 3rd, you had a call with Rob Stewart, who at the time was a Deputy Minister of Public Safety Canada. Do you recall that phone call?
I do.
Okay. And we'll turn to your notes for that one just to jog your memory if you need to. That's ONT 405153, please. So part of it is redacted. If we can go down to, just scroll down, please. Okay. So you have a phone call at 1300 hours, I think, with Deputy Minister Rob Stewart. He says that there are 300 commercial CMV, that's commercial vehicles.
Yeah.
To make to the summary?
There is one change I'd like to make.
Okay.
It's towards the end. There's a reference to tow trucks that were supplied or coordinated to, I believe it says we supplied 10 to the city of Ottawa.
Okay.
Send 10 to the
We
city
could scroll
of,
down to try and find that.
very close to the end. I think keep going. Keep going. Yes, so it says here in this paragraph that's at the bottom of the page, Mr. Freeman's understanding is that MTO sourced some heavy tow trucks for Ottawa and up to 10 tow trucks for Windsor. It's actually 10 for Ottawa. For Windsor, we provided a contact name for a tow truck to the OPP, but I don't believe they used that tow truck operator.
Great, thank you. Any other changes?
No.
Wonderful, so we'll have that entered into evidence. So Mr. Freeman, could you start by telling us your current position?
Currently, I'm the Assistant Deputy Minister of the Corporate Services Division at the Ministry of Transportation, which is also the Chief Administrative Officer.
And I understand that wasn't your position during the events of January and February earlier this year.
Yeah, that's correct. At the time, I was the Assistant Deputy Minister of the Policy and Planning Division at MTO.
And can you tell us briefly what your responsibilities are and were at the time?
Yeah, so as the Assistant Deputy Minister in Policy and Planning, I was responsible for developing long-term transportation plans, developing transportation policies. We had a unit that was responsible for intergovernmental relations, as well as other policy coordination type activities.
Okay. And what generally is the MTO's mandate?
Well, MTO's mandate is to provide safety for the transportation network, to do operating of the provincial highway system, to provide long-term transportation planning for Ontario's transportation system, and other safety and operational activities related to the transportation system.
And your role within that is the lead on policy development.
That's right.
And who do you report to?
I report to the Deputy Minister of Transportation.
And who was the Deputy Minister at the time?
It was Deputy Minister Laurie LeBlanc at the start, about halfway through the protest period in mid-February. Ministry's thinking that maybe that applies to other actions that we take in the future. So, the next time there's a conviction there's an action taken by the ministry, have we shown history of constantly using our processes and legislation consistently and, as they were intended for? I think there was a worry of that as well.
Was the concern, just so I understand, was the concern that if there was a conviction for an offense, for example, under the Highway Traffic Act, that occurred during the convoy, and that ended up on a carrier's record, and at some point in the future formed part of notice of suspension or grounds for a suspension of their CVOR, was that a concern to the ministry? No. Okay. So it was just a bypassing your normal process that was a concern to the ministry?
Yes, bypassing the normal process and using it for something that has never been used in the past or intended to be.
What is that something? That's, I think, what I'm struggling to understand.
To try and address a protest or a civil unrest situation, not to address specifically a case where we have a well-documented safety record and police records to us requesting certain activities.
Understood. Thank you. Could we pull up ONT 50111? And could we scroll to the bottom? Or, sorry, yeah, just to the top of that email. Perfect. You were taken to this email, Mr. Freeman, but not to this part of the chain. This is an email from Mr., I'm going to pronounce it Beauparai. I apologize if I'm butchering that. And if we scroll down, we can see in his signature block, a little bit further down, Mr. Clerk, thank you. He's with the MTO, correct?
Yes.
With the Highway Operations Management?
Yes.
We'll scroll up.
I don't know.
Okay. Are you aware that under that act, that at any time, for the purpose of safety and security, that the Federal Minister of Transport If the minister is of the opinion that there is an immediate threat to the security or safety of any international bridge or tunnel, the minister may make directions, including directions respecting the evacuation of a bridge or tunnel and the diversion of traffic or persons, requiring any person to do or refrain from doing anything that, in the opinion of the minister, is appropriate to do or refrain from doing in order to respond to that threat. So he's permitted to just pass an order to vacate the bridge, vacate the area. Would that have been helpful?
Well, so two things. First, without the act in front of me, I can't say that's part of it or not. I don't work for the federal government. And again, police were leading the response, so you would have to ask police whether or not that would have been helpful.
Mm-hmm. And this protest, that it started on the 7th?
No, it
7th of February?
started. Sorry, you're talking about in Windsor. I believe that's the date.
Right, and they cleared it on the 12th,
12th and 13th, I believe. Yes.
before the Emergencies Act.
Yes.
And at no time did the minister pass a regulation in order to vacate that bridge.
The federal minister,
Yeah.
not to my knowledge.
Thank you.
Folks, if you want to be kept up to date on what's happening at the Emergency Act inquiry, including my live tweets and some clips and highlights that occurring at the Emergency Act inquiry, by heading over to revolutionnews.ca/Emergency Act Commission. That's revolutionnews.ca/Emergency Act Commission. And of course, here folks, while you're there, please head over to donorbox.org/Emergency Act Commission. That's donorbox.org/Emergency Act Commission. And of course, here folks, if you could chip in a buck or two, that will be greatly appreciated, as it will help me cover my travel expenses, including my expenses on food, as bringing you these stories doesn't come for free. Thank you so much.